on social services, let alone money to pay back the creditors. Government has responded by securing a bailout package with the International Monetary Fund, IMF, that will help restructure the economy and enable the country to pay back creditors. Now the focus is on negotiating with the creditor to restructure the country's debt. Until that happens, the country may have a tough time convincing the IMF to approve the bailout package. Well, while all this is going on, debate has continued on whether the IMF is a solution to the country's problems. Do IMF policies help or hurt the poor? My guest this evening is economist and as well as chairman for the Development Bank of Zambia, Mr. Noel Nkhoma. Sir, welcome to the program.
Good evening, viewers, and good evening, Basho. It's good once again to have me on your platform, and let's have an interesting conversation.
Last time we spoke about DBZ, and today we're trying to narrow in and focus on IMF. But while the discussion around the IMF bailout package is one that will not go away soon, and it keeps on coming up, and there are solutions and counter-solutions from various sectors. But in all this, we seem to have lost the understanding of what the bailout is all about. Let's start from there. I want you to explain, what is the IMF bailout?
Yeah, thank you once again. And yes, the debate has been going on, more especially after missing the target, which was June this month. But I think let us make the Zambian out there to understand, first of all, the significance of this program to the Zambian government, to the Zambian people at large. First of all, the IMF bailout basically is some kind of a financial intervention to be able to allow a country, or to assist rather a country which has been hit by a financial crisis. Zambia currently is in the ICU. It's been hit with a financial crisis. Now, if you, I take you back briefly, Gervasio. In the last administration, or the PF administration, Zambia defaulted on multiple loans, right, to the extent or resulting into the cabinet of His Excellency, the past President of the Republic of Zambia, Dr. Edgar Chagwalungu's cabinet resolving on what you call a debt standstill. Or rather, the country agreed that we do not have capacity to sustain or the momentum of debt repayments. As such, we are not going to pay. The country right now is in a default mode, meaning that we consumed or borrowed beyond that which we could be able to pay. Now, that could have been as a result of, without proper planning, we went and contracted anyone who had money to throw to Zambia. We agreed and accepted without understanding the implications at the time. Now, under the new Dawn administration, the first 3 months of his administration was concentrated on trying to resolve the issue around debt. Mind you, in the last regime, for 5 years, there have been attempts to bring the IMF to the table, which yielded no results. Because at the end of the day, the only credible institution which can help us out of this debt still remains the International Monetary Fund, of which Zambia is a member. So what is it that it's a bailout? What the IMF is doing, which I think we have to understand very well, is that the IMF is bringing the much needed or the lacking credibility to the process. Mind you, even in the last administration, the government undertook what you call a debt sustainability analysis, meaning that they had to consolidate the debt and be able to measure whether, with the resource base that Zambia had, in terms of revenue generation, domestic revenue, any bilateral grants, what have you, we were able to afford to repay the debt. They realized that, one, the liquidity ratios had been burst. They had gone out of control, which basically means that in the absence of sufficient liquidity to maintain your repayments, you cannot be able to do that. The solvency ratios were also way out. The debt to GDP ratio was also out of control. So what basically the UPND, New Dawn administration, has done is to now go back to the IMF and said, yes, there have been these attempts in the last 5 years, but we think that we have done our homework to be able to convince you, and through you to convince the creditors, whether the private creditors or the official creditors, that Zambia is now serious about resolving the debt crisis.
Paying back the debt. So when we talk about IMF, you've mentioned one thing, that's credibility. So IMF brings to the table credibility. One other thing that is being mentioned is a $1.5 billion package. Is that a loan?
Yes, it can be a loan, but basically all intended towards what you call budget support because of the constrained fiscal space. Meaning that, mind you, we're coming also from what you call a poorly managed, poor economic management, which has resulted us into the situation that we find ourselves in. That coupled with the COVID, right, which basically has created a strain on the economy. So that 1.5 billion is intended to be able to support the budget going forward. But I think most importantly also is to begin a process of whereby we stabilize the economy. So that injection is not intended. Many people think that the 1.5 billion is intended to pay back the loans.
Part of the loans.
That we have acquired. No, IMF does not refinance loans. We have to be very clear. IMF also does not finance countries which are in arrears. But the fact of the matter is that Zambia is in arrears. So I think what basically this debt restructure that we are now trying to deal with is to resolve some of those issues. So that 1.5 billion or 1.4 billion in other circles is intended for what we call budgetary support towards social spending. You mentioned about social spending, be it health, be it agriculture, be it education.
So the money goes towards budget support.
Absolutely.
And now there's anxiety. I mean, initially this deal, when it came through, announced in December last year, was that we would clinch it by June. We don't have it. We're in June and closing the month, and we anticipate this is going to happen in September. Where is the problem?
Well, I think you have to first understand that there are two sets of creditors. The ones that we owe money externally, the quantum I think which comes to almost 14.4 billion. They are private creditors, mainly the Eurobond holders. Then you have also got the official creditors. This is the bilateral governments and other bilateral institutions. Now, that is where the China factor comes in. So, first of all, we have to make a case to persuade these creditors to agree. Now, one of the things that could have basically thrown us off target to achieve closure by June was the fact that not all creditors have been aligned, right? Because one thing that you also have to understand is that we are going to these creditors and said, yes, we owe you 14.4 billion, but we don't have capacity to pay. And for us to basically be able to agree on some kind of a common framework, whereby if it's a win, it should be a win-win for both, or a loss-loss for all sides. You have to hear us out. And how do they hear you out? We are now saying to them, why don't you take a haircut? If I owe Grevasio $1 billion, I'm now saying that I want to pay. I don't want to remain in this default status. But instead of paying you 1 billion, out of this 1 billion, 500 billion is a principal. But the other 500 billion is interest. So why don't you forgive me on the interest component to the extent that maybe you forgo 50% of the interest? That is the haircut. This is the engagement that we are now having with the creditors. Then over and above that, we are now saying, yes, our economy has been under extreme stress. We think that even those maturities which fall due this year, we do not have capacity to pay. Can you give us another 10 years? Because in that 10 years, our economic reform program would have taken hold, and we will now be in a position to expand the economy, grow the economy, create a prosperous middle-class economy again. Consumer spending should again come back. So what we are basically saying, we are going to these creditors to make them take some kind of concessions, including extended maturities, haircuts, and also the rate that this debt is accruing. Because mind you, we may be one creditor, we may be maybe accruing interest of maybe 20 million per month. So what we are saying is that...
So we're asking for debt forgiveness in some quotas, not a total.
Not
you may
total
not call it
write-off.
total write-off or total forgiveness.
Exactly.
That's what probably you're calling
Exactly.
a haircut.
A haircut, yes.
An ordinary person needs to understand your technical language in terms of. So we're asking for three things.
Yes.
Rescheduling.
Rescheduling, increasing the maturities to give us space. Because mind you, why we have gone to the IMF is to create that much needed space for the economy to grow again. Because without that space, 75% of our consolidated revenues, whether domestic, bilateral, and any other support which comes into Zambia, to come towards the budget support, 75% will be going towards the debt servicing. With that 75% going to do debt servicing, it means that you are not able to have money for infrastructure. You don't have money to even meet the government wage bill. You don't even have money to pay for social spending in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of FISIP. So we are saying to them, give us room so that we're able to still continue to live and breathe, but at the same time, be able to discharge our obligations.
So this negotiation with the creditors is what has caused the delay in achieving, in having the IMF bailout request approved. And there are concerns around that, the delay. What does it mean, this delay by the IMF to grant Zambia the extended credit facility? What does it mean? Well, I mean, a lot of people are concerned. Does it impact major social programs? We're talking recruitment of teachers. We're talking recruitment of health personnel. We're talking social cash transfer for the vulnerable and the poor. We're also talking about constituency development fund. Is there a chance these are going to be impacted negatively once this is not approved?
From where I sit and from what I know, I think we have to give credit to this administration. We have to give credit to the President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, the Minister of Finance, is that notwithstanding all these shocks, the budget has still continued to perform. And you mentioned about government commitments going forward. The teacher recruitment is not at a standstill because of the June target, which was missed. No. The teacher recruitment is still ongoing. The health workers recruitment is still ongoing. Government is still discharging its responsibilities. And as far as social cash transfer is concerned, with an expanded budget outlay, government is still discharging its responsibilities towards FISIP. In fact, if I do anything, there's a more transparent FISIP procurement now in terms of fertilizer and the other input suppliers. So to me, if there are any delays in those areas like teacher recruitment or health workers recruitment, it is not necessarily anchored on the fact that there is no sufficient budget to be able to meet that. But it's simply put administrative issues. I think it is a long time since Zambia had such a huge recruitment exercise in one go. So recruiting 50,000 people, it has never happened in a long time, or it has happened before, but not to the extent that it's happening now. So you're bound to face what you call administrative challenges.
Bureaucracies.
Absolutely. So I think to me, by virtue of the fact that we are having an engagement with the IMF, we are having dialogue with the IMF, and the IMF has endorsed the economic recovery plan. The IMF has endorsed the debt sustainability strategy. It gives you every reason to believe that we are on course. There is this delay, of course. It may happen in September, but the budget has been structured or framed in a manner that all these contingencies were taken into account.
So where you see, where you're standing, you do not see teacher recruitment going beyond September?
Not at all.
Not tied to the IMF?
It's ongoing. It's work in progress. And it will happen. That is why I'm saying there are people who have raised issues to say, what if even September, the IMF bailout does not come through?
I was going to ask you that.
Exactly. One thing you should understand, Grevasio, is that we have got technocrats sitting in the Ministry of Finance who have a clear understanding that such delays are bound to happen. And when they were framing the budget with the Minister, Honorable Msokotwane, Minister of Finance, all these were taken into account. Mind you, as we sit now, in terms of the revenue side, the budget has performed above target. So there is clear indication that we're on course. Then secondly also, the appetite for government securities, be it treasury bills, government bonds, has not faltered or in any way been affected by the failure to attain the June target. So which tells you that the confidence levels in this administration, the new donor administration, are extremely high, that everyone is pushing to get Zambia back, all the 8 cylinders firing once again.
Your answer now takes me to an issue that has been a bigger debate, maybe I should say, where people are saying, well, look, maybe we don't need the bailout package after all.
Well, I think...
I mean, we've run almost the whole year without... We'll be getting to September,
yeah,
more than half the year without the package. Maybe we don't need it.
We do need it. Like what I mentioned in my opening remarks, Agrevasio, we are running a default economy without any credibility outside there. The confidence is back, quite all right. But do you understand why the cost of funds or the interest rates for lending still remain high? Why? It's because our risk profile out there is still high. It's still high. Without IMF coming in to help us stabilize the economy, to help us to begin to post growth beyond the projected 3%, to go back to the MMD times of 8% plus, we will continue to be underperforming as an economy. We will still remain uncreditworthy. We will remain a high-risk FDI destination. So what we are saying is that let us recalibrate the economy to be able to restore our past glory as a preferred destination of investment. Because mind you, what we have seen is stability in the economy. The exchange rates have come down or stable from 24. You remember they used to spike. They have now settled around 16. But we think that if we do more in line with what we're trying to achieve under what we call the economic recovery program, we should see probably single digit in the exchange rate. We should be able to see the loan interest rates coming down from the 24% now to somewhere around 15%. So all these factors speak to credibility. And the institution that is going to play that catalytic role of restoring that credibility is IMF. Now, you said we don't need the IMF, we can raise this money.
There's debate, yes. People are saying, well, why don't we use our resources? We've got, we've got emeralds, we've got gold, we've got... And another point is that all we need is seal the leakage. Seal the tax leakage, not transfer pricing, no tax holidays, increase production, diversify agriculture, have more exports.
Absolutely. But you also understand that the private capital, it never comes cheap, right? We are agreed as Zambians that the government is technically bankrupt to be able to recapitalize the mines. Right now, KCM is bleeding, right? It's bleeding because government does not have the money to be able to pump into KCM. Mopani, from the time that Glencore exited, they have been saying that they need $300 million to be able to recapitalize, to be able to ramp up production. Has that money been made available? No, because government does not have that money. So it's private capital. So for you to attract private capital, there should be sufficient confidence in your government in terms of policy pronouncements, in terms of policy consistencies, and also over and above that, to be able to demonstrate to the outside world that you are a disciplined government. You are going to maintain your fiscal discipline to be able to restore the country to a situation where we can now go to the outside world to say we are now ready and open for business. We are not in the state that we are. The economy is not performing at the rate that we think it should because there's this debt overhang. So,
I think this 1.4 billion dollars that we're trying to get from IMF, we can easily raise internally.
If it were possible, it would have been done a long time ago. All those people who are making all these grandiose offers to say we can be able to pay the installment, why let them put the money where the mouth is? Why hasn't it happened? If really Zambia has got capacity to raise that debt, first of all, it's not only about the debt issue, right? 1.4 billion is not only about the debt issue. Mind you, what we owe is more beyond the 14.4 billion. We suffer also, most importantly, from a credibility deficit, which we have to also deal with. We are a default state. If Zambia was a company, its going concern would have been questionable. Probably it would have been under liquidation.
I want to pick your thoughts on the mines before we get back to the creditors. Government has an ambitious reform program for the mines, and under this, a lot of I don't know if it's concessions have been offered to the mines, starting with mineral royalty tax, which has now been made deductible, and value-added tax, zero rate on capital equipment and machinery. There are issues of zero rate on copper cathodes that are sold locally or exported, zero import duty on copper ore and concentrate. These have also raised an issue, a debate. Government, on the other hand, says they want to push up production to 3 million tons over a period of time. But from another angle, people are saying this is too much. It's amounting to tax holidays, amounting to allowing the mines to operate freely while we're going with a begging bowl to ask for money outside.
I do agree to some extent on the concerns that many sections of Zambians have raised as far as tax holidays are concerned. I think let us be extremely not that kind of country as much as we need this FDI, whereby we give away even the money that we need to be able to, first of all, reboot the economy, social spending and so on. I, for one, do not subscribe to value-added tax. I know UK has done away with that, and many jurisdictions have done away with that. So to me, yes, we need FDI, but not to the extent that we forgo that revenue, which I may regard as low-hanging fruit. So private capital is required, but we should also begin to pick lessons to the extent that if we are going to forgo all that revenue, then what signal or message are we sending to the people that we're asking to take haircuts, to the people that we're asking to be able to discount the debt that we owe them? So we have to be extremely careful in terms of how much we can be able to give in order
to push it to the 3 million tons. And
I agree.
3 million tons for you, that's a good target, but
it's achievable.
Unrealistic in some way?
It's extremely realistic. In fact, we should have achieved that about 5-6 years ago. But
you've talked about the mining sector bleeding currently. KCM, not attended to.
It's like
Mopani, not attended to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's lack of capital. Because there's no private capital. Government does not have capacity. Had we managed our what you call mining policy regime framework in a manner that was a win-win situation with the mines, would not have been in this situation, right? So to me, yes, let us be able to hear them out, but in whatever we agree, let us ensure that we put first national interest first.
So with the copper production pushing up to 3 million as per target, there are two things that one is a concern being noted that, and questions being asked. Is our energy sector able to support this growth?
Oh yes, I think to me, again, I've been somehow privileged to have served in the ERB in the past. And I know how much investment has gone into the energy sector. ZESCO, for example, I think right now they're in surplus in terms of production. We've got Mamba Claris. We've got so much, I think, which has gone into the energy sector in terms of investment. So we are now sitting what I may comfortably consider as an energy surplus or power surplus. So with the projected growth, and I think ZESCO is still pushing in so much investment into, I think, a few lower gauge. Right now, I think it's just under 30-40%, which has been fired up. There's another 70%. So we are more than energy surplus as we sit now as a country.
So ready to take up the production.
Absolutely.
There's now the talk about copper being at prices being at on an all-time high, and there's a strong push that Zambia together with DRC now need to take up this advantage and push the agenda for electric motor industry and of course battery production. Where are we as a country? Are we able to seize this opportunity?
Yes, but
are we late already?
I think let the private sector be able to take up that initiative and drive that agenda. Because I think the problem that we're having is a problem where people believe that for these things to actualize, you need government to push. No, I disagree. But government should also have a deliberate policy to be able to support private sector initiatives. those who intend to venture into that kind of space, so that we are seen as a government to be pro-private sector, not as the case is where you have IDC with so many of these companies which were previously privatized. You renationalize them, and almost 70-80% of our portfolio is bleeding, is loss-making. It doesn't make sense. So what we should be saying to ourselves, let us strongly push the private sector initiative. And I'm happy that His Excellency, the President, again, initiated what you call the Private Public Sector Dialogue Forum, with a view to be able to harness this potential, which yet remains unexploited.
Let's go back again to IMF and creditors and the bailout package. I know Zambia started its official creditor committee meetings. First one held this month. Good news there, of course, China is on board. This is what many have referred to as the China factor, and I know you spoke about it. Yeah. Why is it important to have China on our side?
It's an elephant in the room. It's the biggest single loan exposure that we have as a country. So they're a huge stakeholder in the scheme of things. So again, kudos go to His Excellency the President to having taken that initiative to engage with his counterpart to be able to unlock that deadlock. So right now, as it is, you have rightly said, the official creditors meeting took place, I think, last week, or is it still taking place? But again, with a view to ensure that all the creditors are aligned and agreed in terms of the quantum of support that is required for Zambia to be able to make a case to the IMF.
How soon do you see these creditors agreeing? I know that one of the sticking out points was around the issue of transparency. Well, even these creditors may not trust themselves. Among themselves, there may be a little bit lack of trust with asking for what others may call confidential detail. Transparency, calling for everything to be laid on the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see this being an issue as the negotiations proceed?
I think the IMF role should not be oversimplified. It is an independent referee in all the scheme of things that is happening around the debt restructuring. You remember what I said, is that the whole process initially lacked credibility. That is why the PF administration, for 5 years, they failed to get this deal on the table because of that credibility issue, which you rightly raised, the transparency issue. The IMF is coming with a full disclosure, full transparency. And even if we did our own what you call debt sustainability analysis, the IMF had to do their own, which they have presented now to the creditors, which cannot be questioned, cannot be doubted because of the credibility credentials that the IMF carries.
Now, I was asking about the time, and it seems there are too many meetings that are supposed to be held. One meeting probably is for the commercial lenders.
Absolutely, yes, the private lenders.
Private lenders.
Yeah.
And we are still looking at September. Is that going to happen?
I think we are optimistic.
Will the meetings close before then?
That it is bound to happen. I think so much work has already gone in. And I was actually elated with the visit by the IMF Deputy Managing Director. And if you could tell from her statements, the IMF is rooting for Zambia. They want this thing to happen like yesterday. So to me, with that kind of credibility test pass, we should all, I think, be more or less optimistic that this will happen. And I'm sure if the target has been moved to September, it is going to happen, maybe before that or slightly around that time.
Now, the first bullet payment for Eurobond is due this September. Another huge problem for the country if the date is not renegotiated. What happens if we fail to pay?
Mind you, Zambia is still in a debt standstill mode. So I think this does not in any way exclude the first Eurobond maturity. But all things being equal, the government has still continued to engage various other options around making sure that this debt is deferred in the same way that the creditors are being engaged, because capacity definitely is not there. So it will have to be deferred in the same scheme of arrangements that we are talking about.
Now, the finance minister is being attacked from certain quarters. And imagine you were sitting in his chair and people are saying you do not have a plan B. All you're doing is relying on IMF. When you look at it as an economist, maybe as chairperson for DBZ, do you see any plan B besides IMF?
Well, at this moment in time, it's too early to call. But I think, to me, we should be able to acknowledge the effort and the amount of work that the Minister of Finance and his team have put in to keep the economy running, even under extreme stress. Mind you, Grevas, you are coming from an environment where civil servant salaries were delayed, not 1, 2, 3 weeks. But now they are being paid on time, if not even early. We are coming from an environment where civil servants' loan installments were not even being remitted. Pensioners' dues were not even being paid. They were 4 years backlog. And in a short time, in under 1 year, all these things have been reined in. To me, that tells you that indeed the Minister of Finance has a plan, because he has been able to manage all these difficult, domestic debt, no default on domestic debt. It tells you that we are in the right hands, and I think we are set to achieve that which we have put in front of us.
Now, one other issue coming out when you talk about IMF is conditionalities. Yeah. I know they haven't been disclosed, but what Zambians know about dealing with IMF is that there are always conditions attached, and some of these will include no subsidies, do away with non-performing parastatals, largely parastatals, no over expenditure, wage freeze, and employment cuts. Is this what the nation is staring at?
I think the IMF of 1972 is not the IMF of 2022. The IMF has reformed over time, and it's got a human face. Weren't you shocked, Grevasio, to hear that the IMF is talking or encouraging countries to effect fewer subsidies? So the IMF of yesteryear is not the IMF that we're facing today. Yes, subsidies which do not help what you call prudential management of resources should not be entertained at all. Fewer subsidies, for example, should not be entertained. But at the same time,
which apparently are being entertained now.
No, there are no fewer subsidies. The fewer subsidies, what is being entertained is VAT and duty on fuel, which the government is still bearing. It's an indirect subsidy.
It's a subsidy. I mean,
yeah, but the subsidy as in subsidy is no longer, it was done away with. Then 2, over expenditure. It is only the right thing to do. If you are living on borrowed money, you are living on borrowed time. So why should you, because mind you, under the economic reform program, there are legal reforms which government has committed to itself. It's a program which was not done by the IMF. It's our own program, where among the legal reforms, you are saying that the government we shall maintain what you call a debt ceiling, right? They will not borrow more than what Parliament has approved. The Minister of Finance now, under the legal reforms, under the economic reform program, has to go to Parliament to seek approval for debt. And the Parliament will ask, who are you borrowing from? For what? At what cost? Right? What is the tenure? How does it impact on your debt sustainability strategy or threshold? So, yes, there are going to be pain. There's going to be pain, no doubt about it. There will be pain.
When you talk about pain, what are you talking about?
But
of course, subsidies going. No.
Yes, that's pain. That's what I'm talking about. Then 2, there will be need now to rein in expenditure. Avoidable expenditure would have to suffer. So to me, you cannot be begging for debt forgiveness and still think that you can maintain your appetite to spend. No. One has to give in. And this is the state that we are in. We are in a state where the economy is in a crisis. So there are some other interventions which need to be taken to stabilize the economy. And these are some of the things that have to happen.
So let's look at another issue. Parastatals, privatization. Is this something that you anticipate that the IMF will be demanding that the government do?
To me,
if we're going to access
it should be a no-brainer, Grevasio. Because first of all...
So you're talking retrenchments, privatization maybe.
Yeah, but first of all, why should government continue to hold on to non-performing parastatals? Why should they continue to hemorrhage? I think IDC, if I'm not mistaken, made a loss of 3 billion kwacha. Isn't that money supposed to go into boosting agriculture, into boosting tourism, create more jobs, into healthy and education spending? Do we still need to do that? No. I totally disagree. So to me, we should say to ourselves, only those companies which are being able to sustain themselves, sustain their operation, should be allowed to continue to operate without government support or subsidy. Because at the end of it all, if I were sitting in the seat of the IMF managing director, I would not allow that.
Which companies would you have in mind that really need to go? Government needs to let go of?
Yeah, Zamtel, for example. The MMD administration let Zamtel off. What happened? Zamtel, in private hands, began to compete with Airtel and MTN. Zamtel was strong. What is happening? The Minister of Science and Technology, what did he say about Zamtel? It has been loss-making. Now, are we being serious as a country? Are we being serious? Let government not compete with the private sector. If you want the private sector to thrive, allow the private sector to operate in that space, and all you do is to create that environment and the necessary regulation to be able to thrive. Why should government compete, first of all, by buying milling companies? Why? There's so much private sector milling companies. Are they making losses? No. If they were making losses, they would have closed. What motivation was there for government to go and buy milling plants? Those are questions that we should be asking ourselves.
Let's look at it holistically when we talk about the IMF bailout package. And the question to ask is, once the bailout has been negotiated successfully, the bailout given, support given, what's the long-term solution? What should government do? After we've achieved this, we'll have the bailout in our hands. And where do we go?
We have been through this before. You remember the structure adjustment program?
And we're back from where we
Under
started.
the highly indebted poor countries, we have been through this. And because of recklessness, in as far as the management of the economy is concerned, we are back, if not in a worse situation. Now, we should be saying to ourselves as Zambians, do we still want to repeat this another 10 years to come? What are we bequeathing to our to the next generation, to our children, our grandchildren? What we should be saying to ourselves, let this be the last time that we mismanage our affairs. If we had not mismanaged our affairs, IMF should not have been here. We are here, and IMF is here because of our recklessness. So after this, let us learn lessons. Fiscal discipline, spending within your resource envelope. Let us reinstall or institute cash budget. The Minister of Finance should only spend when the money is sitting in the account.
But you agree with me that that is not usually not the case when it comes to politics.
But it has happened under
not necessarily maybe politics, demands from the people.
No.
In terms of financing and your envelope and what people need. But for a developing country like Zambia, you probably have a...
How did Honorable Ngandumagante manage? How did, may so rest in peace, President Manausa manage? It was a cash budget. What is different now? If I told anything, for the first time in many years, or rather, we had a middle class back. We had more prosperity. People had surplus money to spend, to build houses, to buy cars, to take their children to the best schools. There was so much, consumption was at its highest. There was demand. That is what drives an economy. If people have got surplus money to be able to spend, to take your wife and children to a restaurant, to spend, you are creating jobs, not only to the restaurant owner, and to the employees of the restaurant, but to the farmer who supplies that restaurant, to the brewery which supplies the alcohol in that restaurant. But now, when the consumption is subdued, there's no spending, you don't have an economy.
Post-IMF bailout, you were listing what we need to do. One of them is cash budget. What else?
Well, it's again to be able to follow through with the program. What we have agreed with the IMF and other bilateral arrangements, we have to be disciplined enough to follow through that program to the letter.
Internally, what should the country do? I mean, we're talking of
we can look
building on human capital.
Yes.
Pushing up exports.
Export, exactly.
Increasing production.
But what we should also be doing, you remember that we produce so much minerals. Let us domesticate the trading of those minerals. How do we strengthen the kwacha? We strengthen it if the trading of the kwacha, of the minerals that we export is done locally. For example, through the Lusaka Metals creation of a metals and commodities exchange in Zambia. If Grevasio sitting in France, you want our copper, you pay into a Zambian or a local bank. So those are some of the things that we need to do. Those companies which need support, even in the private sector, which we think give us an opportunity for job creation, for more taxes to be realized, let us support them. Government should be able to come in and support them, not by buying off the companies, but creating some kind of a framework or environment which allows that company to be able to access cheap capital. I'm now being biased. Let us recapitalize DBZ. The private sector can only grow if DBZ is strong as it was in the time of Dr. Kaunda. And I'll say it again. The Copper Belt was a creation of the Development Bank of Zambia. But what has happened to the Copper Belt now? It's dead. There's no industry. Why? It's because capital is expensive. So we need to strengthen, deepen our financial sector, strengthen our development financial institution, so that those who have got ideas which can be can evolve into opportunities, let us support them. But we need to support them with the right capital mix, the right tenure, and the right technical support.
I want to pick your mind again on one issue that government has been insisting on: transparency, predictable and fair regulatory environment. This has been almost like a song for the government. What are your thoughts about that?
There's no way out. All those things speak to a very strong governance culture and regime. That is what we need. That talks to trust.
Predictability, very difficult to stick by.
No, you can be predictable. You cannot be churning out policies.
In terms of policy?
Yes, in policies.
There's always pressure.
Which are contradictory every now and so often. That is what killed the mines, Grevasio. It was all around the tax regime policies around the mines. Today, the Minister of Finance wakes up in a different mood. He removes VAT. Tomorrow, he introduces or she introduces the sales tax. We need predictability. If you are to plan, a plan is over 1 year. A budget cycle is over 1 year. Stick to that, which you have enshrined in your budget. As simple as that.
Let's look at an international issue that probably is affecting Zambia, the Ukraine-Russia war. And I think this is having a ripple effect globally. Do you think this has impacted on Zambia very strongly?
It has. It has. You know, the supply chain has been affected. If you go to most of these outlets, the shelves are almost half empty. So that tells you the pass-through effects of the Ukraine-Russia war. But most importantly, the petroleum pricing has been impacted. Again, you also have to understand that when the global economy is impacted to the levels that we are seeing now, where in UK for the first time there are mass protests around the cost of living, which has not happened in many years, then it has got a what you call a contagious or a contagion effect on the Zambian economy in general. So yes, we are feeling the effect of the Ukraine war.
5 years from now, where do you see Zambia's economy?
Under the new donor administration, I see stability, I see reinforced governance, and I see heightened confidence in the country, and I see an increase in FDIs, and I see a prosperous Zambian people and government which will be able to create the necessary, the much needed opportunities.
Is that going to happen in the next 5 years?
It will happen.
Or the ground, you're talking about the groundwork?
It has already begun to manifest. There's stability now in the economy. There's predictability in the economy. It may not be as pronounced as it to be able to be felt by the trader in Soweto, by the trader in Kanyama, by the trader in my village, Lwangeni, but it is slowly beginning to take shape. Let us give a chance to proper and prudent economic management.
As we go, let's look back on the IMF, and I wanted to say something where we had headlines saying that IMF deal had collapsed.
It hasn't collapsed.
In your view, why do you have a contrary view? Why do you think it has not collapsed? Why shouldn't people think it's collapsed?
It hasn't collapsed.
Why should they believe that it has not collapsed?
Why I say so is that China, if they did not have confidence in the success of the IMF deal, would not have come to the table. Two, the IMF, at a very high level of deputy managing director, was in the country to give assurance and reassurance that they are hungry for this to happen. What is that? That is a show of confidence and endorsement. And most importantly, most of these, what you call the IMF shareholders, sit in the European Union. And you saw when President Hakainde Hichilema went to address the European Parliament, the standing ovation that was given. When last did the Zambian president receive that kind of endorsement? That alone tells you the kind of opportunity that Zambia, or the space that Zambia sits in right now, and the opportunities which will unfold not too long from now. So, to me, all the key performance indicators towards securing an IMF bailout have almost been ticked. All the boxes, we have ticked all the boxes. All that it remains now is for the creditors now to just be aligned and say, Zambia, yes, haircut, we won't give you 10%, we shall give you 40%. And we move on. It will happen, Grevasio.
Agriculture. I think we forgot to discuss this important issue. It has remained a dream for Zambia.
It has.
Not really massive push to achieve what this sector can give to the country.
Absolutely. Why? It's because we have mismanaged agriculture. High cost of imports, right? To the extent that even opportunities to export. How do you have a situation whereby you have got a bumper harvest and you close the borders with Congo? You can't export. They're offering you a higher, maybe 3-4 times the price that you are being offered by FRI. They're offering you $100 per, let's say, 50 kg bag of maize. And FRI is offering you $15. You say, can we export? Your government shuts the borders. And anyone, after your toil, your sweat, you produce 200 bags, you have managed to find a market in Congo DR, you are called a smuggler. You are called unpatriotic Zambian. These are the things that we have to say to ourselves, we should not allow this. I come from Chipata, Eastern Province. I was campaigning in the last election. You know what used to happen? Malawi was offering more for maize. Malawians, there's a huge market for Zambian maize in Malawi, huge market for goats, for beef. But what happened? A government puts in national service. Anyone who tries to export, don't allow them.
Wasn't that in national interest?
Arrest them. What kind of a prosperous people do we want to have?
Wasn't that in national interest?
What national interest?
You're looking at internal food security.
No, because at the end of the day, we are having what you call a liberalized regime. Allow people to trade. That money is coming back to Zambia. That money is coming back to Zambia. And what happened when you realized that there was so much maize that you couldn't, FRA could not buy in terms of strategic reserves, you opened up the border when it was too late. South Africa had already filled the void, the vacuum. Zimbabwe had already
So what happens, for instance, in a hypothetical situation where all the grain is exported?
No, but it can't happen.
Then the nation will start re-importing?
It has to be managed, but not managed to the detriment of the hard-working peasant farmer there who wants a better price for his produce. We shouldn't do that.
Do you see the cost of inputs coming down in the very near future?
I hope so.
The farming season is just a few months away from
Remember we talked about transparency in the management of FISIP. where there was an open tender and so on. The president, in fact, attended the engagement of the suppliers of fertilizer. But I think, to me, let us recapitalize Kafue nitrogen chemicals. The equipment and the machinery is obsolete. And I know during the MMD, there was a plan to get totally a new set of equipment. There's the money which the Saudis have offered to the Zambian government under the Saudi fund. And part of that money should be used to be able to access cheaper and affordable fertilizer. That is one of the major inputs which pushes the price, continues to push the price of maize up. So what we are saying is that agriculture should not only be restricted to maize. We should also look at other cash crops, cotton, soybeans, and so on. Cotton, we have not done well, for the simple reason that we believe that it's a loss-making cash crop. But why is it loss-making? Because there's no demand. There's no textile industry in the country. All the textile industry is closed. So we have to now begin to have a rethink in terms of industrialization. And when you have industrialization kick in, then the agriculture sector becomes viable once again, because there'll be demand for soybeans, there'll be demand for cotton, there'll be demand for tobacco.
Mr. Nkhoma, it's been a pleasure having you on the program.
The pleasure is mine, and thank you very much once again for having me.
You've been watching Sunday Interview, and our guest this evening was Mr. Noel Nkhoma, the chairman for the Development Bank of Zambia. He's also an economist, and we were looking at issues around the IMF bailout package. Thank you for watching, and pleasant viewing.